Hi everyone and welcome to my channel Rainierbooks. My name is Rainer. Herzlich willkommen, willkommen. Today I have another review for you because I finished my, I think, 7th book for this segment last night. The book I want to talk about today is Akala's Natives, Race and Class in the Ruins of the Empire, published in 2018 in the United Kingdom. So without further ado, I think it's time to talk about Akala's book. I discovered Akala. I didn't know Akala because I am not that much into hip-hop, but Akala is I think he's 37 years old now. He's a hip-hop artist. He started as a hip-hop artist. Now, today, he's an author. He has written this best-selling book in 2018. It was published. He has also written a young adult novel after that. And he is an activist. He is a speaker, a very talented, charismatic speaker who speaks about his issue, and that is the history of Black British people, the history of racism in the United Kingdom. Places in the United Kingdom, but all over the world, all across the world, Akala has lectured. And if you have the opportunity, I will link to a couple of speeches or discussions that he has given in recent years up there in this link section of this video. This is basically his life story. He was born as he says in the beginning, I was born in the 1980s and I grew up in the cliched single-parent working-class family. We often depended on state benefits. We lived in a council house. I ate free school meals. I am the child of a British Caribbean father and a Scottish English mother. So Akala realizes when he is 5 years old, he realizes that his mother is actually white. He depicts that experience very prominently in the beginning of the book. And it's very much a story of his upbringing, but he draws from incidents that happened in his biography, in his life, to issues that are relevant for the history of class and race in the United Kingdom of the 20th and 21st century. Black people are often depicted, black male people are very often depicted as the source of the problem, the source of violence, the source of murder, and people call for policing. They are speaking of an epidemic of violence, of knife violence in London. But Akala points out in his amazing book that the issue of race is very often also an issue of class. He tells his story in a bunch of 11 chapters, yes, where he starts with his formative years in the 1980s, the day I realized my mom was white, until he comes to larger issues. He's drawing historical things. He's telling us the history of racism and slavery in the United Kingdom, and he tells us about education in the United Kingdom, the educational system that is very much designed to feed the upper class, to produce 1 or 2% of highly academic people who are going to, because you don't need much more people to rule a country than the 1 or 2% of the elite, and all the others have to be down below. And when Akala grew up in the 1980s and the early 1990s, and when he went to school, he was lucky, he said, because he went to a Pan-African Saturday school that gave him a lot of insights, a lot of pride as well about the history of the Caribbean, the history of African culture, which is not being taught in the schools of the British school system. So he learned a lot of things that he didn't learn in regular school. He said lots of immigrants who came from Jamaica to the United Kingdom, they came from middle-class households in Jamaica where they got good education, more or less good education. And when they then moved to Britain, they thought that their children would get even a lot better education than they got at home, because it was the motherland, wasn't it? But in contrary to that, they got worse education, and their children would get the poorest schools and the schools with the least resources and the least money and the worst teachers. So what many immigrants did was to build and form Saturday schools, Pan-African Saturday schools, where they taught the history of the African history and the Caribbean history, and to try to make those children aware of their history and to give them more knowledge than regular school would give them. And that's where Akala grew up. He never went to university though, but he is a very educated man, and I think if you his book Natives has a very long list of secondary literature that he has studied. And I want to quote one part of the book. The history of the British class system. Despite all the rhetoric about meritocracy and equality of opportunity, Britain is still, like every nation on earth to some degree, a society where the social class and era you are born into will determine much of your life experience, chances and outcomes. The quality and type of education you receive and your likelihood of interaction with police, social workers, prison or other state institutions will all be influenced by class. If you visit any prison in this or any country, the vast majority of its prisoners from any ethnicity you choose will be people from poorer backgrounds, obviously. We live in a country which has a particularly vicious class system when compared with other similar developed Western European countries. The result is that in Great Britain, the largest number of people incarcerated in Europe live in Great Britain, are in British prisons. And even a vaster number of people are incarcerated in the United States, mostly black people, as you know. And even like in the United States and even in Great Britain, if you are black, the chances that you become incarcerated in a British prison is 8 times larger than if you're white. And 72% of the people who are incarcerated in Great Britain are incarcerated for committing non-violent crimes. Akala's book, Natives, Racing Class and the British Empire, gives a great introduction to the situation in the United Kingdom. And he's also telling us that race has always a lot to do with class and the poverty and the violence in which people sometimes have to live because they're stigmatized from the beginning, stamped from the beginning, like Professor Ibram X. Kendi would say in the United States of America. Yes. It's a great book. I really loved it. It's very important to read it. If you haven't read it, read it, listen to Akala's music and listen to speeches that he gives. He's very inspiring, very charismatic, and I'm looking forward to see more of him in the future. Thank you very much for watching this review of this book by Akala, Natives, Race and Class in the Ruins of the Empire. I'll see you on Sunday with another video, which is going to be a book haul. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.